Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So one day at work, I had the opportunity. One of the things that we do on a monthly basis, we have what's called in-service day. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us trail rangers as a team to have some bonding time and to spend a day together, all of us, and on the team. And one day, one month, I had the opportunity to work with a local nonprofit that looks after shelter dogs. Dogs that were either abandoned or had gone through abuse, and they've been taken in the shelter to rehabilitate and to take care of. And ultimately, the goal is to help adopt them into their new family. And so, me and some trail rangers, we went out on the trail and to meet up with the organization, and they brought their truck, and they had their whole all their they had brought, I think, 4 dogs. And I'm not I'm not good at, as far as discerning what kind of differentiating breeds, and not much less even the knowledge of like dog breeds, but like based on like what I see in my experience, they seem like they were like a pit bull mix, all of them. They had clearly different personalities, and so we had to do our the whole nine paperwork and stuff like that. And then they were taking out the dogs one by one, and then my team would just like pair off uh, and just work with the dogs that they had a feeling for. And so for me, I had that feeling to kind of wait at towards the end, rather than just like, oh, okay, I'll take this dog or whatever, and just and walk with him or her. And I'm glad I waited, because the last dog that they took out, to be able to I get to have the opportunity to walk with. Her name was Star. She was the only female dog amongst the group, and relatively speaking, she was like the smallest. But her, like, just comparing her of itself, she was a pretty good sized dog. And I remember, working with one of my colleagues, and we ended up taking the dog. At least initially, I took the leash, and we got like a backpack full of stuff and equipment, things that were necessary in case we needed like food, snacks, and like water, and a little guide as well too, and informations and flyers to distribute if in the event that we came across somebody who was curious and interacted with me and the dog and stuff like that. I can just hand out information about, hey, you can adopt this dog at the shelter, etc., etc. But so for me, when I was walking Star initially, I like I said, she was a very like a lot. All these dogs were like kind of very muscular and strong, and so even again, even though she was the smallest, I mean, she was definitely like pulling, and like she was like kind of leading me type of situation. And I found myself having to kind of like hold back a bit and kind of play a little tug of war with her. Uh, but then I passed it off to my colleague initially, and then we were just having a conversation, and we decided to just give myself that break first and just walk with the dog there. And we just went on a path. And so I have basically get used the water bottle, a little water bottle. It's like a little watering device, where it can dispense a little bit of water, and then the dog can just lick, and drink from there. It was a nifty little device. So I basically used that, since I didn't have the leash yet, and we just walking and chilling, and then all the while I was just catching up with my colleague and just talking about stuff. And then at a certain point, after we walked a good amount of distance, eventually my colleague wanted to just go back, um, where the folks at the shelter were kind of stationed and on the trail. And I decided to take Star on my own. And and for me, I think it was one of those things that I low key felt a little bit uncomfortable. Like I said, like initially when I took the leash, I felt like she was kind of resisting me and just like, all right, I'm gonna go here. I wanna do this. She wasn't being very cooperative. And I remember just thinking about, you know, as far as my understanding when it comes to working with animals, animals are sentient beings. They can sense into what we're feeling, be it our emotions or whatever feelings that we have going on within us. They can sense our inner world. And as such, they will respond to that, or they may react to it. It really depends on the dog and where they're at. They'll respond accordingly. So for me, I was just thinking about, staying relaxed being one of the most important things there. And so when I had the leash, I was a little nervous, and like, when my coworkers like, okay, I'm gonna go my own way. You can keep going, because I really wanted to keep going. So I was like, but it had to be just me and the dog. Although I could have asked my colleague to join me, but I was like, no, I saw an opportunity to be able to work with Star. And so then I took the leash. I had the stuff, the backpack of stuff, and we ended up walking. And we started to go around another loop of the trail. And so then we just started walking, and all the while I was just thinking about, okay, stay relaxed, no worries. I mean, this dog has some strength to her. I mean, if she really could have worked me, but it was one of those things where, again, reminding myself, relax, and just, okay, let's just walk together, and really setting that intention with Star, even though I can't communicate. There's like, there could be some language barriers, or like she won't understand everything. But again, it doesn't matter. Dogs don't have to understand linguistically, or like just like what am I saying. It's really when they'll use the words as like a reference point, but I think it's like the feeling behind the words, really what dogs respond to, I think. And so as I was moving along, and I was learning some pointers from my colleague when he had the dog, of just making sure, like, hey, if when Star starts to go and starts to tug me a certain way, with a sense of firmness and yet still some gentleness there, right? I'm not here to like yank it. I'm not fighting Star. My intent was to work with Star for this period of time that I have with her, walking her. And so, I would firmly, but hey, Star. And for the most part, she's been very responsive, you know, which I'm grateful for. Even at some point, I remember like thanking her for her cooperation, because I really did had an awesome experience. And so, but there was a point when I could feel that she really wanted to actually move, because one of the things I noticed initially when I had her in the leash, and why I felt kind of resistance and what kind of added to it, because she was pretty rowdy. She was kind of pent up. Dogs. There's this term zoomies, when it's like when a dog needs to like really like to be able to outflow their energy, to be able to express and move energy out. Like they need to move, right? Just like how I know as humans we need that as well too. I know for myself that is essential. That's part of my why I exercise and I keep at it with consistency, because I need to like move through stuff physically. I can be in the present moment, just move and just be involved, right? There's a lot of reasons for myself, and I know for dogs it's like they need to process, to work through that energy, because otherwise they get pent up, and they'll it could be a situation where it could lead to like aggression, or just like, again, some a lot of dogs, I'm learning, have their ways of expressing, and I know that if it's all pent up, it can be expressed and show up in different ways, and sometimes it could be very harmful. And so that's why it's important for that dogs go for a all doggers. If you're a dog walker, I'm sure it's like it's have to it's a need to walk the dog. They need that. And once she's pretty much had that initial like, okay, I want to, that need to like move around, like I'm outside, I get to move, okay, get this out, get the kind of exert herself, kind of express all that energy out of the way. That's why, at some point during the walk it felt a little bit more easier. um, but still, like I said, I had thought about maybe she wants to like jog for a bit, but I was worried that if I started to like even move faster than our walking pace, that she was just gonna just sprint and just like and then imagine like from like the cartoons and whatnot, of like the dog just like running crazy and the person, the owner just like holding onto the leash, but just like just being dragged along and just flying in the air. I can't think of which particular scene of what example, but like just kind of that reminder of like the cartoons and stuff, and just imagining like, shoot, this dog's just gonna drag me along the grass or something. But it didn't play out that way. But an interesting point though, in the like when we were like closer towards the end, I decided to just like, okay, let me actually give this opportunity and let's just go faster than our walking pace. And and then when I started, and so in that moment, in that last stretch when we started walking or jogging, a very light jog, then she started doing like a light jog herself, and we kind of kept at it for the duration for like, it was like maybe like less than like 50 meters or so, because we were real close when I decided to do it, and it wasn't as bad as I made it out to be, which is a funny thing. It's interesting how, in this experience or anything in life, if I'm like have stuff going on in my intellect, my intellectual nature, my mind, how I can always exaggerate or make things out to be in such a way where when I'm anticipating something, when I experience that thing that I've been anticipating, oftentimes in my experiences is never what it usually was, how I perceived it beforehand. It's like that tendency to want to exaggerate. And I think it's because for me, I have a strong concern for the future. And there's a mix of like a coping mechanism and this need for safety and things like that. And I think part of for me what I could get into is like this ruminating, which I think I have is it's important to be aware of, right? You know, I could do so much to ready myself for the future or whatever I'm anticipating, but it's like I've learned in life that it's like I'm as good as ever. I'm as ready as I'll ever be, and there's always going to be some things in life that I won't truly I won't be fully ready for. It's like I have to face it, I have to experience it and work through it when it happens, right? I don't think we can't fully prepare for everything, and I think that's part of something that's important to life. I mean, yes, there are things like I said, there are some things we can plan for, and if there's, I think for yourself what those areas are, and I think where I have control, where I know I can prepare. It's like, okay, I will take the steps. Especially what I've learned from experience, what I've learned from others. Okay, let me implement, let me plan for some stuff. Like planning is good, right? I don't want to say that planning there should be no planning, but rather it's a good balance of like having to plan, have something set, but then also being open to being fluid, like water, to improv or to improv. Skills like improv, or to just to be flexible. Okay, let me just change it up this way. I think it's important to have a balance in those to be successful when it comes to moving forward into the future. Because the last thing I want to be is rigid. Because if I'm rigid, well, I know life will be life, and it will break my rigidity. I think life asks us to be fluid. If you truly want to be successful and move with a sense of mastery, we need to embody water. It's a water. Water is a very powerful symbol for all things spiritual, and I get it because a lot of things when I speak of the spiritual, it's like there's that need to be that openness, the flexibility. I think all that the openness piece specifically, that's what's necessary for growth to come in, for new ideas, new opportunities, or just even approaching a day with a sense of freshness. Like that right there is also important too, because we're faced with the routines, right? Daily routines, day in and day out. It's the healthiest way to go about it. Otherwise then the routines will win over me, and then I just start kind of doing things and not really living. you know all this to say, going back to me walking with Star. And so in that moment when I was like, damn, like, okay, one of the things I would have done differently, I'm like, maybe I would have earlier in our walk, I would have actually give trusted myself and give her the chance. Okay, let's go for like jog, because I did sense within her like she had this need to wanted to like to move. Like we all have this need to move. Stagnation spiritually and physically. is very detrimental. It's like unnecessary wear and tear. It's suffering. But when it comes to holistic well-being, movement is such a vital need. I've come to learn and I recognize within myself. And I hope that you'd have some kind of practice to help you move, whether it's dance or stretching or something, even going for a walk. I know everybody can go for a walk. I highly recommend it. It's helped me tremendously. So, again, back to the walking thing. My friend Star, something I've noticed with Star, there were a couple occasions, there were times when she would be kind of wanting to go ahead of me, or she wanted to go out somewhere and there was that tug on the leash, right? But when that happens, I feel like we're not working together. So, when I would be firm with her, be like, hey, Star, hold on, come with me. Let's stay on the trail. Let's stay on the path, right? And when she'll be cooperative, I'll definitely reward her with water and be like, all right, great, good girl, awesome. And then there were moments when we were walking together. The leash had some slack to it. Now, for me, that was a powerful moment because when I'm walking with her without slack, there's no resistance. There's no this tug of war. Again, resistance that's happening between her and I. And to me, I saw that as a way of just like walking with, working together. And it's like this sense of teamwork, right? I think, I think about those moments when I've with people and, and my work life that I've had that kind of dynamic with, that is just this, is just this, I don't know how to how to say it. It's like imagining myself with this person as like gears on the machine, and we're like really lubricated, and so it's all smooth. There's no like this in the machinery of our opportunity working together. Especially like when it comes to like my colleagues at work now, or even my previous experience when I worked at a school. And I'm definitely grateful and appreciative of that, because that cooperation piece. I mean, that is such a vital thing when it comes to working with people. And like to really to get that, there has to be some respect. And that's part of what I was thinking about with Star, right? I know she's a dog, but I didn't think of her as lesser than. Like I just thought, no, she's just a dog, a spirit in the dog form. And with that sense of sentience, intelligence in her own way, right? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna work with this my companion here, and and I think, as I mentioned earlier, like just having that outlook of just working with and this respect and staying relaxed, all of that contributed to me just having that awesome experience, and to be able to see like when we had those moments of just walking together, the leash with some slack, and it's like, oh man, this is great, you know, and it's something that for me to think about in my relationship with my spirit guides, because oftentimes for me I can see the analogy for myself of like being Star, where I'm trying to resist and I'm trying to do this, and then my guidance, not as to say literally like my guidance had me on the leash, because they respect my freedom. They're all about freedom. They're not going to tell me what to do. I want to preface this. But really it's just like when there's no that tension, right? When I'm not resisting, because usually in my relationship with my spirit guides, the troubles are in my part. My guides, or at least think about your team. They're doing their part. Where the issue comes in when it comes to working with spiritual guidance is usually us, because of our intellectual nature, our conditioning, our programming. And so when I work through my stuff and I can come into working with my guidance, with my team, the way when Star was walking with me and there was no slack and no tension. To me, that's that sense of balance. So I think that's really like the core of like why that meant something to me, because we were moving together with that sense of balance in our cooperation, in our relationship, right there in that moment, in that opportunity. And so it definitely, like I said, I'm talking about this, right? Like, talking about walking dogs and stuff like that. And In this podcast, I talk about a lot of experiences I have because, it's through those experiences where I draw from the things spiritual that helps me grow, right? And it's that opportunity for me to to share that with you. It's like, as we're going through life, it's like life is the greatest teacher because of experience. You know, um, I'm adding a little context here into like why I'm sharing what I share. With intentionality, because we can have theories about life ideas, but without experience, there truly is no growth. And to me, I always look to any experiences I have, even the most what may appear as mundane, like walking a dog. Talking about this, I think things like that hold a lot of information for me. Why I'm henceforth why I'm sharing this episode with you, this experience with you. And so I share this to say, like, never underestimate what you're experiencing, because that's the beautiful thing about life is like whether we're washing dishes or tending to our garden, there's always opportunity for us to learn and grow. There's always opportunity to learn more about ourselves. And this is something that it's like almost like a muscle, a spiritual muscle that I have developed a lot in, you know, over the years of doing the inner work. And it's that kind of mindset that has helped me put things in perspective, especially when I've been faced with people that have given me challenges in my life. It's like, oh, seeing this as, okay, this is another opportunity for me to learn about myself, which really also added to my inner peace as well, if I may add. And so uh, I'm really grateful for the opportunity for the organization that we partner with, to be able to have this, and I'm so grateful for my job that we have like these monthly in-service days where we get to be able to we're able to do cool stuff together, um, and doing all sorts of things, and I get to have experiences I've never had before, and I've always talked about, oh, I've actually, when I was looking for work, I had applied for a couple of stuff as a dog walker, a couple jobs dog walking. And it's funny how things can come full circle. And I've had this opportunity to like actually do some dog walking, having that experience. So it's amazing how, there's this curiosity and desire to do something, how it can show up at some point down the line. Never underestimate. Like if it's something you're curious about, wanting to try, maybe perhaps you never gotten around to doing it, right? Because life comes up, other priorities and things come up. But then, lo and behold, later you might come to have the opportunity to do that thing you were curious about. All the more reason it's important to to stay open. To embody that, to embody water. You know, and as I'm sharing all this, again, this is like really some of the stuff that I'm like, wow, thank you, Star, for like teaching me all of this. Just this opportunity. When it comes to just whether it's just a furry friend or a human friend or a friend in spirit form, it's like being able to embody water, to be flexible and open. That really can enable me to work with all those relationships that I named. The dogs, or any animal species, or humans, or my spirit guides. It really does says a lot about relationship dynamics and what I can do on my part where I have control, you know, because it would be a waste of time if I try to try to control the other person or influence anything like that. To me, that's a waste of time. If I want to help somebody, I want to inspire change within them. If I try to affect or force change or anything where try to make this change an outside in, I'm not creating that truly lasting change or true change in general. All this to say, if you're someone that cares about making an impact, right? But by example, from inside out. Otherwise, it's not going to be effective, in my opinion. You can forget about it. You waste all that time and energy. It's not going to be really, truly effective. Won't be practical. And so, so this is my little talk this episode about that experience, and I'm so grateful for Star and the team. Um, yeah, and it's just moving on. I always try to keep that perspective of like life's one big adventure, and every day is an adventure. When I'm doing that, and really entering my day with that sense, with that feeling. It's amazing what's come up for me in the past, what can show up. And then in those experiences, that when that's happened, it truly reminds me that my life's there for me. And this to say, your life is there for you too. How open are you to the blessings and the beautiful things that are just there waiting for you, waiting to be received by you, to be acknowledged? Can you see the blessings in the mundane experiences? Can you see the miracles at play in the mundane experiences? I invite you to think about that as you carry yourself, because it's one of the ways that we can be successful on a day-to-day basis. That's such a key staple to life, the rhythms and routines. And so I'll leave it there, my friend. If you made it this far at this episode, I feel like I've kind of been all over and just kind of stumbling over my words at some points. I've just been to preface, I've been kind of coming up to recording this episode with a bunch of other stuff and navigating a bunch of other things I got on my plate. Might talk about that in another episode. Not in this one, of course. But but if you made it this far, I really appreciate it so much. And so this has been another episode of Spiritual Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.